the Out of Bounds podcast with Josh and Adam. If you don't know anything about us, we are a young Sheldon rewatch podcast that Josh and I are huge fans.
That's right.
Huge fans. So we're gonna be rewatching all the No, I'm just fucking with you. So we're here to talk about all things Ohio football. So that's your Buckeyes, your Browns, and your Bengals. And today we're gonna go over the Cleveland Browns 2021 season. So we've spent the last couple weeks really obviously with the Bengals in the Super Bowl going over that. So we wanted to kind of take some time now that football is officially over. I know for you, Josh, it's not officially over because USFL and all that fun stuff and players I've never heard of before. And I know you're really into all that. But football's officially over for the next few months. Obviously, we'll have some draft and free agency stuff to talk about here in a little bit, but let's just take some time, kind of recap, go over everything, and what better place to start than your Cleveland Browns?
So, well, first, Adam, can I just publicly apologize because Adam's been this podcast is his. He is the captain of the ship. He's been doing all the editing. He's making it snazzy. He's been putting it on YouTube. He's got the cool little backgrounds. I give him full credit for this podcast and what it's going to become. He likes to record on Tuesdays, and I could not record on Tuesday. Something came up. I got in a fight with my girlfriend. She was upset that I wasn't listening to her. I don't know. I wasn't really paying attention. But then on Wednesday, I tried to record on Wednesday, and then it was Adam's fault because he had to ice his banana.
Yeah. So I did have to ice. Yeah, I was going to ask you how your banana, if you iced it well. So I'm sitting here. Let me tell the story. So I'm sitting at my wife's grandma's house, and I had left my phone out in my car. And I play in a basketball league on Wednesday nights for the church that I go to. And you had texted me and said, "Hey man, like I know we couldn't record yesterday, but I'm free tonight." And I was trying to text you, I can't. I've got a basketball game tonight, and I'm texting on my watch, which is somewhat new. My wife got it for me for Valentine's Day, so I'm trying to figure this shit out. And I kept I hit send before I got everything, and then it auto corrected. And let me read you exactly what I wrote here. Let me get there. You said, "I'm free tonight if you want." I said, "I can't. Ice for banana. Sorry, I'm texting. I can't tonight. I've got a basketball game." I was trying to say, "Sorry, I can't. I've got a basketball game," and it said it somehow autocorrected ice for banana, and then I hit send when I was trying to erase it. So
love it.
I do appreciate that.
Love it.
Obviously, talking about things that you love. I was obviously a big fan of your wardrobe last week. I did get a call from my sister, and she said, "Dude," he's like, "I'm getting ready to watch your podcast. What the fuck is Josh wearing?"
What? Was it a compliment? It didn't sound like a compliment.
I don't know. She was laughing. I was like, he explains it. You just gotta listen. You just gotta watch it. She's like, "All right, I'll watch it. I'll call you back."
she came off
I think
a little
she was
rude
a fan,
there, but
dude. I think it was a compliment in disguise.
When I was single, Nathan Royans and I would go to the Hollywood Casino. Okay, and I would wear the fur vest. We'd actually take turns wearing the fur vest, dude. And the MILFs loved it. We were there one time for an Eddie Money concert, and the MILFs, dude, it was just, it was like a snail trail, bro. That might be too inappropriate.
It's like, no, not at all. There's nothing too inappropriate. So it's kind of like, it's Always Sunny fans. So it's kind of like the duster, that's kind of like your version of the duster.
Yeah. You don't want to wear a shirt with it.
No, you can't. You can't.
You can't wear a shirt with your duster.
Do you want me to bury you in it when you die?
Oh yeah, dude. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
For sure.
I figured.
Dude, but back to football. You're so dramatic, dude. Oh, football's over. First of all, we got the HBCU Legacy Bowl this Saturday. Very exciting stuff. I love that the NFL is giving more of a wider glance to these smaller school guys. So it's very exciting. There's some good talent down there, especially with the transfer portal wreaking havoc. We got the USFL. The USFL draft was the last couple of days, and that was amazing. It was a little boring. I don't know why they did positions by rounds. I thought that was odd. And my favorite part of all of that was seeing people on Twitter that weren't really paying attention going, "Wow, they're going to really defense. The Baltimore Stallions are going really defensive heavy." And it's like, well, no, they have to because they only are allowed to draft defensive linemen. I don't like that format. I thought it was kind of awkward, but it was fun. It was still fun to watch. 3 Buckeyes got drafted, so that was cool. Are you frozen? You go on ice? Did you go ice your banana? He's coming. Adam Moore's coming back, everybody. Adam Moore's coming back. It's black right now. I keep adding him and going back in. I tell you what, why he's gone, since I'm never gonna get to talk about this, why he's on the podcast. Let's go ahead and let's talk about the USFL draft. Okay, so they started out round one was quarterbacks, obviously, and I thought that the very first player off the board was Shea Patterson. So immediately, the league starts out a little bit like a laughing stock because Shea Patterson was not the most successful collegiate quarterback, right? But I tell you what, I watched Shea Patterson in the spring league, and he was he was a much improved passer. Matter of fact, I was watching the spring league. It was post COVID. No, maybe it was during COVID. I can't remember. It was the most recent season of spring league. And it was Shea Patterson and JT Barrett were both in the league. I think JT Barrett was a quarterback for the Alphas, and I was watching to try to see JT Barrett, right? Well, Shea Patterson blew him away. His improvement, the velocity on his ball, the way he didn't panic. Shea Patterson has always had a pretty decent level of athleticism and a pretty decent arm. He's just not very smart with it. But that really looked like it really improved. So that might be something. The Michigan Panthers are coached by Jeff Fisher. That might be something to monitor. Might be something kind of cool to watch. Another guy to watch out for. They drafted, so round 12 was another quarterback draft, and the Michigan Panthers went out and they got. Oh, Adam's back.
What are we still? All right, we're still. All right.
I was talking about USFL, dude. I was saying that the Michigan Panthers had one of my favorite drafts.
Fucking A. All right, I don't know what happened. My internet just straight kicked me off. So we built this house up on this huge hill, like 600 feet away from like the road, so I couldn't get like true internet out here. I put it in order, fucking Elon Musk and his Mars internet. I don't have it yet, so now I'm using like this janky ass cell phone internet service provider. It's spotty. But hey,
honestly though,
we persevered, dude.
You sound way better than you did the last time, though. You sound way better.
Do I really? All right.
You do. You sound way better. I don't know what.
All right. So
are you want to restart, or you just want to keep grinding through?
No. Let's just keep grinding through it, and we'll just cut it and make it look good.
Oh, you're the boss, dude. Oh, you're the boss. Where did we leave off?
You were talking about USFL, but let's get right in. So let's just go ahead and get into. Actually, let me plug in. Let me plug in my computer here. We'll edit. We'll edit some of this out. All right.
But
so
I don't know if you saw. I don't know if you saw, but Paxton Lynch was drafted in the USFL draft.
I did see that, drafted second behind Shea Patterson, which I heard. I saw your take on Twitter about.
He was the 16th drafted quarterback of that draft. So
that seems a little late.
I did
see Jordan Teamu, which I was a big fan of his from.
Yeah.
What was it? What was the last football league that he played in?
Yeah, he played for the St. Louis Battlehawks. The St. Louis Battlehawks of the AAF.
That's right.
No. Jesus Christ, dude. XFL. The XFL. He played in the XFL.
Yeah, that's right. So if you don't know already, Josh, he knows more about random football than anybody on the planet. I'm convinced of. Like, you know more random football players than I even knew. Like, it's so crazy, like the depth of your football knowledge. I'm like, these are random ass fucking players.
You're gonna get there, Adam, because we're gonna play USFL fantasy football this year, bro. And if you're interested, I know our one fan, Adam Wilkins, will definitely be listening. If you're interested, We're gonna have a league of 4 people. Let's do it, bro. Let's do it.
When does the league start?
April. We got and we don't want to do the draft right now.
We got time.
I feel like a lot of the guys we saw get drafted are probably not going to be on the roster. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on. But anyways, I'll stop talking about USFL. Let's dive into what do you want to do? What do you want to talk about?
All right. I want to talk about your Cleveland Browns. Obviously, okay, so let's rewind 10 months or 9 months or however long ago it was when the start of the season, back in August, the Browns had their over under win total was 10.5 wins for the year. Obviously, they went 8-9. Didn't
Yeah.
went the under cash on that win season total expectation. So, but preseason, like obviously 10.5 games over under, that was like tied for fifth most in the NFL. So there was obviously a lot of expectations for this team before the year started. So tell me a little bit about like where your mindset was coming into the year. Like what were your expectations for the Browns coming into the season?
So I say it every time. Every time I kind of do my little victory lap. It's a very negative victory lap, but I do it. I was on All Eyes on Cleveland earlier this week with Brad Ward. Check out his show. It's great. It's also on YouTube, Facebook, all that good stuff. But my expectations, I know that there were a lot of people in Cleveland, a lot of Cleveland Browns fans thought that the Cleveland Browns were going to be Super Bowl contenders. That was never in my realm of possibility. I said that they are a couple players away and everybody has to be completely healthy. Neither of those things happen. They're still a couple players away. They're more players than I thought. I overestimated how good they were. And injury, they got ravaged by injuries, right? And then I don't want to. They shouldn't. I didn't say they got. I shouldn't say they got ravaged by injuries. They got hurt by injuries and also some departures. The Odell Beckham thing was bigger than most people want to believe. So they're a couple pieces away. I'm not as disheartened as most because I didn't have them in the Super Bowl race. I didn't have them winning the AFC North. I just had them competing, and I don't think that they got embarrassed. I mean, they won 8 games, but they definitely weren't good. They won 8 games in a year where the Ravens were down. I don't think they're going to be down. It's very clear that the Bengals are the top echelon of the AFC North, and the Steelers are not bad. The Steelers made the playoffs last year with an aging Big Ben who probably needed to retire a couple years ago. Dwayne Haskins has got all the talent to be a starting quarterback if he's got it in between his years. If he doesn't, they're in a prime position to either trade up, move up, try to get a quarterback that can at least dish the ball to some very talented players and Claypool and Juju Smith-Schuster, and they got some playmakers, and that defense is always great. So the Browns are in trouble, and they got some spots that need to clean up. They got some things that they need to figure out.
Yeah, I was high on the Browns coming into the year. Honestly, you're coming off of the season before they lost that really tough, close game in Kansas City to go to the AFC Championship game. They won the AFC North in 2020. They brought back their entire starting offense from that season. You're getting OBJ back healthy off an ACL injury. I kind of thought that this is the year for this offense to kind of take that next step. And on the defensive side, like you upgraded that defense. You brought in Troy Hill, Jadeveon Clowney, Takaris McKinley. You drafted Greg Newsome. You drafted everybody calls him Jock, but I want a chance to say this so you can tell me if I pronounced it correct. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Is that right?
You did great, dude.
Boom. I've been practicing that all day. All day.
So hey,
but Jock, everybody calls him Jock, right? Super athletic linebacker that is kind of like that tweener. Can play. He's just very athletic, moves in space, great, and he had a great year. And so did Greg Newsome played well too. But tell me a little bit about obviously having everybody back on the offensive side of the ball, and then you put so much into that defensive side of the ball. Like how disappointing was it to kind of and talk a little bit. You can tell me a little bit about like obviously injuries played a big role in that, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But how did the offensive defense perform relative to your expectations coming into the year?
Obviously poorly. Both sides played worse than I thought they were going to play. But with that said, I don't think that they made any bad moves last offseason. I think they approached the draft correctly. I was not high on Greg Newsome. I thought that was too high for Greg Newsome, but not because Greg Newsome, I thought he was a bad player. It's because Greg Newsome was injured a lot throughout his college career, and he didn't really play he was always injured when Northwestern was playing someone top flight. He was injured when they were playing Purdue and Rondale Moore. Mm-hmm. He was injured when they were playing Ohio State and Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. I think he had like a game his sophomore year against Chris Olave. That was really it. There wasn't a whole lot to watch of him. When he did play, he dominated. But I was a bigger fan of a guy like Asante Samuel was still on the board. Right, that was a guy who had some whatever. We're getting off topic, but JOK, that was a guy that I loved. I gave him a first round grade. That's a guy that I thought. You're going to hear at this draft too, where there's going to be all these pundits and analytics guys coming out and saying that linebackers don't matter, running backs don't matter, and that is just simply not true. Average linebackers don't matter. Average running backs don't matter. But if you have a stud If you have someone that can move sideline to sideline, who's effective in coverage and against the run, he's very good. Look at the Bengals, Logan Wilson, right? That Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah has all the athleticism to hang with tight ends. He has the explosiveness and the quickness to rush the passer. He can do a lot of things. We talked about being a tweener between safety and linebacker, and those same folks who didn't want the Browns to draft a linebacker were sitting here talking about JOK as a safety. He's not. He's a second level defender. He's a linebacker. Deal with it, and that's fine. It's not a bad thing. He's a different type of linebacker, and that's why he got drafted so high. I think they went about the right way. One of my favorite draft picks was James Hudson. They drafted who's a left tackle of Cincinnati who handled Georgia very well. Former 4-star, 5-star recruit that went to Michigan, transferred to Cincinnati to play with his buddy. I can't remember the name of the running back. I can't remember. That's gonna.
I know you're talking about.
But that was a guy that I think has starting potential. That they got in like the 6th round. They drafted Anthony Schwartz, a guy with speed. I was not super high on Schwartz. I thought there was a couple receivers better, but they tried to get that. They knew that they lacked speed in the receiving corps, so they tried to get him. You mentioned all the free agents. I don't really have to cover that anymore, but I like that they emphasized defense. I do. I think that was needed. That was what was necessary. I think if the offense. If the offensive line was healthy all the way through the season, if Baker was healthy all the way through the season, and they found a way to incorporate OBJ, or he wanted to be in Cleveland, we could be looking at a different season. But here we are, and now the emphasis is probably going to be on the offense.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously, just to put a cap on the defense, and this isn't the most advanced analytics that I've got here, but they allowed like almost 20, just under 22 points per game, which is like just a little above average from an NFL standard. So obviously there's room for improvement. But what was the weakest part of that defense? Obviously you got Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney rushing the passer. Where's the weakness of that defense? What are they gonna if they're going to address anything on the defense side of the ball this upcoming offseason? Like what are they got to do?
So that's two different questions, right? So if they're what they're going to address this offseason is. I think if you're asking what their main priority on the defense should be this offseason, it should be defensive end, okay? Whether that's to re-sign Jadeveon Clowney, I don't know. That should be their number one priority is to re-sign it should be one of the top priorities is to bring back Jadeveon Clowney. He played very good. He was a great pass rusher. He's even better against the run. I like him. He's not going to last forever. Myles Garrett needs someone on the opposite end, okay? So it would not shock me if the Browns drafted someone who could rush the passer at pick number 13, like DeMarvin Leal from Texas A&M, George Karlaftis, defensive end from Purdue. And the thing about those two players, too, is they would also help improve probably the weakest link to the defense and another point that they need to emphasize in the offseason is defensive tackle. DeMarvin Leal is a guy that weighs 290 pounds. He's going to blow up at the combine. That's a guy that can play defensive tackle and play defensive end. George Karlaftis, I have less faith in him playing defensive tackle. That's a guy that's going to weigh in around 270, 280. He never did it at Purdue. Marvin Leal did play deep in the interior of Texas A&M a little bit, but there are rumors out there and scouts that have said he can play both. He can play it down. We saw Malik McDowell get in trouble again after his impressive season. He's probably not going to be back. He was on I think he was on a 1-year rental. That was a low deal because he hadn't played football since like 2018, and it looks like he's done. You can't. How many more times can you get in trouble, right? I'm a little bit more positive on the interior than most people. I know when I talked to Brad, that was one of his major concerns, right? If you look at Malik Jackson, he's an older guy. He was not very good. And then you got Jordan Elliott and Tommy Togiai, who were just playing not very good last year. Tommy Togiai kind of showed up at the end of the year. I'm more bullish on those guys. I think that those guys can be good. Jordan Elliott they drafted him based off of potential from Missouri. This is a guy that's very explosive, a gap splitter. And you combine that with Tommy Togiai's elite anchor. That's a guy that got pushed around the NFL because he was so used to being the strongest dude on the football field every week at Ohio State. And you have to adjust to that. When you're so good at something and that gets kind of taken away a little bit, you have to learn other skills. And he's completely capable of that. So I think that Tommy Togiai is in for a big second year. I think he can do it. And I think what was his name? Jordan Elliott can turn into a pretty good player too. But it wouldn't surprise me if they added help. I think we talked about who did we talk about last week? Oh no, it was with Brad. The defensive tackle from Rice. I know I'm going to forget his name again, but that's from Connecticut. I'm sorry. The defensive tackle from Connecticut's going to be a guy that's going to be there in the 3rd or 4th round. That's a guy who's 330 pounds and dealt with double teams and triple teams at UConn. That could be somebody that the Browns add. It would help immediately.
The defensive backfield. So I know last year when we were doing these podcasts, You're froze. Hold on. So so you were frozen there. I'm gonna screen grab that for you. That was a great screen freeze. Anyway,
you were frozen there for a second too. I was like, what's going on?
Tell me a little bit. I hope it catches that people really appreciate it. Tell me a little bit. Obviously, at this point last year when we were talking about the Browns, the big conversation was safety. They drafted Grant Delpit. Forgive me because I didn't watch every Browns game. Did he get injured this year?
Grant Delpit? Yeah. I mean, he got bumped and bruised, but I think he ended the season healthy.
Did he play the year? Okay.
He didn't play the entire year, but I don't think he was just bumped and bruised. I don't remember who.
And then they added Troy Hill too. So like, what is there anything on the back end? So you obviously at the corner you got Denzel Ward, who's elite, obviously, and then you got Greg Newsome, who I'm really high on, just based on his production at Northwestern. Is there anything you need to do in the defensive backfield?
Is there anything you need to do? I don't think there's anything you need to do. It's not going to be a top priority. I mean, I'm looking at the depth chart right here. These are all guys that we talked about. Denzel Ward's elite. Troy Hill. I was never a big Troy Hill guy, but he was very good with the Rams. He kind of had an off year this year. I don't know what's going on there. Ronnie Harrison is a big question mark because he's a free agent. I don't know if he comes back. I think his price tag might be too big. I would do everything I could to sign him, but we'll see what happens. John Johnson's a good player. Grant Delpit's a good player. Richard LeCount played a lot better than people thought. Greg Newsome, you talked about it. Green Williams, he was healthy for majority of the season. MJ Stewart, when they moved him to safety, MJ Stewart played extremely well. This is a guy that's physical and can play. I liked him coming out of North Carolina. He was a guy that was a little too slow to keep up with number one wide receivers, and that kind of happened. That ended up being the truth because he got cut by the Buccaneers relatively early into his career. But he's a guy that can play at safety. I think they found him his home. I don't think it's mandatory. I don't think. Reaching out and trying to fill the defensive backs, just maybe depth pieces here and there. If that makes sense.
So let's switch over to the offense side of the ball. Obviously, yeah, absolutely. On the offense side of the ball, last year they returned their entire squad from that 2020 season where they won the AFC North. Obviously, OBJ's gone. There's talk about Jarvis Landry and whether or not he's going to come back next year.
Yeah.
Wide receiver is going to obviously have to be a position that gets addressed this offseason. How do you view the Browns moving forward at that position into next year?
They got to add wide receivers. The first place I would look, obviously free agency's coming up. We talked about it last week when I was talking about the Bengals. The Browns deal with the same problem as the Bengals. It's going to be really hard to grab a top flight free agent, right? So, a lot of Browns fans are going to wish for Devontae Adams and, who are some of the other top flight wide receivers? Allen Robinson, Chris Godwin.
Yeah, I don't know if Allen Robinson's necessarily a top flight, but I think he's like mid-tier. Maybe of the actual free agents.
Well, then the Browns have a shot at someone below that because Allen Robinson's going to be above their tier 2, right? So I'm looking at DJ Chark.
Okay.
DJ Chark's probably going to be someone in the room, a guy who's been bumped and bruised in Jacksonville, is looking for a fresh start. They can still overpay for him, but still not break the bank. A guy who's 6'4", 6'3". Runs like a 4.3. That's a guy who can add you to deep speed, and he's a little bit more well-rounded than a guy like Anthony Schwartz. That could be someone that could come in and do some damage right away. You could get him, then you could go and draft a guy like Garrett Wilson at 13. There's a lot of talk. Again, I talked about this with Brad. There's a couple wide receivers that could fit that niche right there. Jamison Williams, Drake London. All those guys are real good. The problem with those two guys specifically is A, they got hurt, right? And B, they're not, I don't want to call them one-trick ponies, but they did a lot of splash plays at their universities, right? They didn't do everything. They did a lot of splash plays, right? A guy like Garrett Wilson, despite being on the opposite end of Chris Olave, who's another first-round caliber wide receiver, Garrett Wilson did everything. He played the slot last year. He played on the outside this year. He goes to the middle. He goes to deep. You can hand him the ball off. He's a playmaker. He's excellent after the catch. That's a guy that you could grab at 13, and you might get Jamar Chase level production. I wouldn't guarantee that, but he's a guy that's ready-made. He runs the entire route tree. He runs it well. He's explosive. He's an intelligent player. Then it wouldn't surprise me if they went. Honestly, I did a recent mock draft on Browns Wire where I took 3 wide receivers back to back to back. And it wouldn't bother me at all if the Browns did that in real life. David Bell's another guy from Purdue who's, I think he's 6'2", 205 pounds. Now remember, these are all guys within the age guardrail too. They're all under the age of 23 years old. This is a guy who's maybe has the best hands in college football in this draft class. Phenomenal guy. Has great hands. His biggest weakness is that maybe he's not as explosive and fast enough as some of those top flight guys. But you could get him in the second round. He's a guy that should be able to play, especially if you have to get rid of a guy like Jarvis Landry. He kind of fills that void. Only he's bigger. Another guy, Jalen Tolbert from South Alabama, another big 6'3" guy. He's probably going to run a 4.3, 4.4 at the combine. He's outside the guardrail. He's a little older. I think he turns 23 like a week before the draft. But he's still a guy that he was dealing with double teams, triple teams in South Alabama in the Sun Belt. It was still dominating. Got better every single year. So it would not surprise me if the Browns added a free agent. Not going to be a top flight. It's going to be someone like DJ Chark. That's probably the top flight you're going to get. And then 3 or 4 wide receivers in the draft. And I don't think that's a bad issue. You grab a guy like Jakari Robinson, the wide receiver from Wake Forest in the 6th or 7th round, who I think he's like my size, but he's very productive, catches the ball very well, kind of a gadget kind of player. They need to figure out what Baker Mayfield is, because there's a big question mark around him. So adding as many playmakers that can play at wide receiver is important. You got to fill that out because the offensive line's good when healthy.
Yeah, so obviously, and we'll get to that in a little bit. I have some cool stats about that, and that was a point. I'm glad you brought it up. It's something I wanted to definitely talk about. It's like this is the year for Baker Mayfield. So obviously we can, and we've talked at length on the Browns Wire podcast about Baker Mayfield and like the adversity he's gone through in his stint there in Cleveland. Freddie Kitchens, and then like just all the offensive coordinator changes and head coach changes and offensive changes, and then he got hurt last year. He's coming into the 5th year of his deal. Like they're going to have to pay him or let him go after this, and so they really do need to find out if he's the guy moving forward. Because I think at this point, after 4 years, you truly don't know, and I don't think it's necessarily his fault, right? It's just all the circumstance around his tenure in Cleveland has been rocky, to say the least. So you definitely have to figure that out this year. So that's why that's why I think Cleveland should spend more in free agency to get guys that come in and play now. I think Garrett Wilson's a guy that can come in and play now, but I mean, I'm all for drafting developmental type of wide receivers for the long term, but you need guys to surround Baker Mayfield for this season to figure out if he's going to be the guy you're going to invest your franchise quarterback. So, yeah, I think that's interesting. What do you think? What's your gut on Jarvis Landry? Is he coming back next year? Do you want him back? Is he a good fit?
I want him back. He had one bad year. He was really good 2 years ago. He's always been slow. People always say, "Oh, he's getting older." You can see he's lost a step. There's no step to lose. He was always kind of a nuanced route runner that dominated in the short to mid range. He always averaged 4 to 5 yards per reception. But he catches the ball. He catches the ball well. He's a positive guy. The people can make fun of the quote unquote culture fit all they want, but you know what? He is a leader. He is. I don't know what you there. There is some value there. You can't pay him what you paid him last year, though. I think they owe him $16 million this upcoming year. You can't do that. He's got to restructure his contract or he's out of here. You can't pay him that because he is going to slide. He's going to start to slide down the depth chart as he should, right? But I'm still willing to overpay him to stay in Cleveland because I do think he's a good leader. I think he does do certain things well. I think Baker likes him. It's just you can't pay him the kind of money that you paid him last year.
What do you? I mean, and this is a guy that's kind of took a big step forward this year. And this is a guy that I had a lot of doubts about when you drafted him. But Donovan Peoples-Jones, how do you see him moving forward in this offense? Is he a guy that you can really build around, or is he just a piece?
No, I think he's a guy you can really build around. I'm surprised you said that because when he got drafted, when the Browns took Donovan Peoples-Jones, you said that was the number one guy in your.
It was a great value. It was the 6th round he got drafted or something like that.
Yeah.
So
I think
it's a phenomenal. Yeah, it's a steal from a value perspective. But I had so many questions about him coming out of Michigan. I thought he was a one route guy, and then he just even as how fast he was, how freak of an athlete he was coming into Michigan. He just never felt like he could get separation. And that was something that we talked about a lot. Is hey, separation. If you can't get separation in college, how are you going to do it in the NFL level? And his hands were inconsistent at Michigan as well. So I had a lot of questions about him, but obviously he took a pretty big step forward in the absence this year in the absence of OBJ, and had some productive games. And where I've got friends of mine that are Browns fans that really think highly of him and think he could be a guy. So yeah, I wanted to get your take on him as well.
Yeah, he was the Cleveland Browns #1 wide receiver last year. All right, and I
Mhm.
hope that that's not the expectation next year. Uh, but he's good. I think he has number. We talked about it when he got drafted. He has #1 wide receiver potential. I gave him a third round grade because he has the height, speed, everything that you want. He checks all the boxes, and he was like that coming out of high school as well. But how many times, how many levels can we say, okay, he checks all these boxes? What is he going to do with them? Right,
Yeah.
we saw glimpses of it. It's there. It's just gotta keep transforming. He has the potential to be a #1 wide receiver in the NFL. Is he going to achieve that? It's highly unlikely, but it's also highly likely that he's going to be a damn solid receiver. There's no shame. There should be no shame in him being a #2, or even if he has to be the #1 next year because you're moving.
Yeah.
You couldn't get one of the top flight wide receivers, and you got to make some adjustments. That's fine. Might have to rely on your tight ends a little bit more. But if he takes a major step next year too, it wouldn't surprise me again. He's got a lot of skill. He checks a ton of boxes. You know what I mean? If you were going to create a player in Madden, he'd look a lot like Don Peoples Jones.
Yeah. Well, so obviously the offensive line is, and you touched on it just a minute ago briefly, but it's not obviously not a position of need, right? So three of the PFF's top graded Browns for the season were offensive linemen. Coming at #1 was Joel Patonio. #3 was Wyatt Teller. #5 was J.C. Treader. So you guys are set up front. You may need to add some depth, I guess. You had some injuries up there this year, but the running game and the offensive line should be pretty good next year.
So JC Treader I think he's on the hot seat. I think if I had to put money on it, that's who I think the Browns are going to cut. I think they're going to cut Case Keenum and they're going to cut JC Treader. I don't know why his PFF score is high. I think that might be, we kind of talked about it yesterday when we looked at the PFF stats for the center for the Bengals, right? How his was relatively
Mhm.
higher. His pressure centers aren't really. I think that those scores kind of favor them, right? They're not out on an island as often as your left tackle or your right tackle. J.C. Treader is a very smart player. He's always been like that. You're talking about an Ivy League guy that went to Cornell, the president of the NFLPA, but they're paying him top center money. And a guy like Nick Harris, I think, can be just as good. When he was thrown into action, he was pretty damn solid. This is a guy who was all conference when he was at Washington. I gave him a very, very high grade coming out of the draft. I'm not gonna lie, I gave him borderline first round grade because based off his tape, because he just didn't get beat.
Yeah.
The reason he fell in the draft is because
He's
he's got an unfair. And not only is he small, but he's got an unfavorable body. Right, he looks like your
small.
typical. He looks like a lot of offensive and defensive linemen you draft from Washington. Doesn't look like he's in great shape, but
Yeah, right.
he moves fine. He's got quick feet. He's strong at the point
Yeah.
of attack. Got a good anchor. That I think he can fill in. James Hudson's another guy. I talked about him 5 minutes ago, where I think he can fill in when needed. Another guy that I would watch out for to either be restructured or I don't think
Mhm.
he's going to get let go, but to be restructured would be Jack Conklin. He's been kind of beat up a little bit, and they pay him a lot of cash. So we'll see what happens with that offensive line. I think that there's going to be probably a change or two that's going to occur that might shake some people.
One thing, I kind of want to just run through the season real quick, obviously, and then I have a question for you or something I found in my research for this podcast I thought was interesting. I want to get your take on. So, obviously to open the year, tough loss, right, at Kansas City, 29-33, tough game, close game. When you leave, you're like, I wish we could have got that one, but it's the Chiefs, right? Like you're not upset that you lose at Kansas City opening week, but again, it was a good game, and it's maybe a little encouraging. And then you rip off three straight wins. Now you're sitting 3-1, and you go on the road to the Chargers, and you have that big like back and forth 42-47 loss there to the Chargers. At that point in the season, you're 3-2, two tough losses to two good football teams. Like, if the ball bounces, one way or another, like you could be 5-0 theoretically, and then you come
Yeah.
back home and just get the doors blown off by the Cardinals, and then you're sitting back at 3-3. So talk about that first part of the year. Like, what's your thoughts as a Browns fan?
Like I said, you're at that point they're meeting my expectations. They're going to be fighting for a playoff spot, and they're going to
Mhm.
struggle with the top notch teams like the Chiefs. Now they shouldn't have got their blown door. They shouldn't have got their dicks kicked in by the Cardinals. The Cardinals
Yeah.
are not that good of a team. Now with that said, That's kind of been the Cliff Kingsbury curse, is that the Cardinals start out hot and then they fade fast. Right, so there might not be as much shame in losing to them as I thought. Plus, they had a couple big free agent signings, including J.J. Watt, yada yada yada. But those were kind of my expectations. I thought, if you asked me to put money on the Browns at the beginning of the year as far as the under over at 10 games, I would have taken the over. I would have definitely taken the over. But I did not expect them to win the AFC North. I didn't. It is what it is. I was not as high on them as most Browns fans and most Browns people were.
And then, so after the Arizona game, the Browns kind of just, sent you fans on a fucking roller coaster of emotions. So they go win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, and then they lose, and then they beat the Bengals on in the game at the end of the year where nobody was playing. So, you guys just like hovered at 500 all fucking year. They did beat the Bengals, and they legitimately beat them bad that first game. So, they just kind of like hovered all year. Like, are they going to take that next step? Are they going to go on a run? And they just never could. So it's kind of like
I don't think anybody thought they were going to go on a run, though. Baker was dealing with injuries throughout the entire time. They were constantly, even when they were doing well, they were constantly dealing with the OBJ drama. I don't even when they were at their highs, I think it was like pretty clear this team is really going to struggle to get into the playoffs.
Yeah. So the stat that I want you to kind of, I'm going to use a big word, pontificate on, is their home away split. So at home the Browns were 6-3, but on the road they were 2-6. What's that about? Is that coincidence? Is there something there? I mean,
no, I don't think. There's probably something there. The Browns have good home field advantage. I mean, they got a good fan base. It gets cold up there. That doesn't surprise me. They shouldn't. Obviously, if you're going to be successful in the NFL, you got to win some goddamn away games. So that's a little sad. And one of those away games was against the Chargers. So that barely. Yeah.
They lost that one. Their 2 home wins were against the Bengals, which again, that was a game that got out of hand fast, right? Like they had a 20-point lead in the first half, and then they beat the Vikings on the road 14-7 early in the year. So that's the only 2 road wins that they had.
Oh, well, whatever. Yeah, you got to win more than that. One barely counts. You're still in Ohio, and at that time, the Browns were still selling more tickets in Cincinnati than the Bengals were. So.
Yeah, that's true.
Which won't be the case anymore. But
we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it in a couple weeks. But it was quite the switch. I mean, for the Bengals specifically, like that beginning of the year, like there was, and I think I mentioned it maybe last week or the week before, but there was a time in this season where Zach Taylor was the leading, the odds-on favorite to be the next coach to get fired. So. It was certainly an up and down, up at the beginning or down at the beginning, up at the end of the year for the Bengals.
Yeah. Which is how you want it to be.
Just kind of like up and down all year for the Browns.
Yes. Yeah, but there wasn't much up. Even those up moments, like I said, dude, I don't know. I think you're out of bounds, Adam, when you say that.
Yeah, dude, you're out of bounds, bro. That was one of our our buddies said. He's like, dude, you guys got to like tell each other you're fucking out of bounds more often. It's like, that's a great point. Like that's what we named our podcast ever. We're just like missing that opportunity.
And people love when you say the name of the thing in the thing. People love it, dude. That's a fact.
That makes a lot of sense. All right, man. Anything else you want to talk about for the Browns to kind of cap off their year? Obviously, we're going to have a lot more discussion in future podcasts about the draft and free agency for the Browns and what you think they should be doing. And then after the draft, we'll talk about, we'll kind of get into the preparation for next year. But is there anything else you want to say to put this past year behind you?
It's a shame. It's a shame that they're this bad. I really thought that they were a couple players away. I told you that, right? I thought I had no expectations for Super Bowl, but I really thought that we were going to be able to kind of just things fall into place this offseason. I thought that after a good, successful offseason, we could see them make a Super Bowl run. I thought that they were this close, but they're not. This is going to be another year where they're going to have to really try to figure out. Basically, the theme of 2022 is going to try to give Baker Mayfield enough weapons so we know what he's got. We have to figure out if Baker Mayfield is the guy. So if you got to sign, if that should be your number one priority, if you got to sign a big one and that's your big free agent sign as a wide receiver, which if I had to bet, that's probably what it's going to be. And then you have to draft 4 wide receivers in the draft. That's what you have to do. And a tight end, that's what you have to do. We have to figure out what Baker Mayfield has. We got to figure it out because that's a shame because you want them to be able to, win and draft, be able to play the board a little bit. I think they're still going to do that. This is not the kind of front office to just throw it out the window and draft based off of need. There's always going to be that balance of need and value. So I'm not worried about them doing anything stupid like that in the draft, but it's a shame that they can't really work the board like I thought they could. You know what I mean? Because if you don't need a top-notch player at number 13, you can trade down and get some pretty good assets. And I don't think they're going to be in position to do that this year. I think that they kind of got to draft somebody that can play year one.
Yeah, and that I think this will be an interesting conversation for future podcasts when we get into the draft talk. But normally, I think you're right. I think that 10, 11, 12, 13 is a sweet spot for somebody to trade up and kind of get that third, fourth, fifth quarterback on the board. There's no quarterbacks this year that are so it's going to be an interesting draft.
I think that people are a little down on quarterbacks. Do I think that the quarterbacks are? You had a generational level talent in Trevor Lawrence last year. Do you have that this year? No, but to act like guys like Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett aren't good, or Sam Howell's still gonna impress, dude. Sam Howell's can sling that mother, dude. He just can. The North Carolina lost their 3 leading receivers, their 2 leading rushers from last year. I think that you're gonna see some things. Desmond Ritter's a guy that's very athletic and has a very decent arm. I think the narrative is going to you're going to see people more or less make peace with what's there at the quarterback position, and people aren't going to hate them as much if that makes sense.
For sure. Awesome.
You might see a guy like Caleb Ellaby too.
I don't even know who that is yet, so that tells you how unprepared I am for draft talk. But I'll get there.
Oh, I know we'll get there.
Yeah. Hey, I want to. So obviously, we're going to wrap up the pod here. So obviously, do all the subscribe, go to our Facebook page, like us there. We'll release all the podcast information there as well. But before we sign off, I do have a question. Did you do all the handyman work in your apartment behind you? And it almost looks like you may have corrected it. But last week, I wanted to point out that your poster back there is crooked on the fucking wall. Can you move your camera up? Move your camera poster, up, bro? So I can see it. Your fucking quarterback up there.
Oh, the Charlie Fry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a little fucking walky there.
Well, Brady Quinn was over here and it fell, and I haven't put anything
back
up there. So I think when it fell, it caused a disturbance to Charlie Fry, and I just haven't touched it.
We can't be having that.
I know. I need to fix that, bro. I need to fix that, dude.
Yep. Awesome.
Well,
thanks for joining us.
Dude, you should see all these are all autographs and stuff. It's so unorganized, dude. It's so bad.
You're an interesting guy.
I got 2 bins. 2 bins full of autographed jerseys.
Your memorabilia is pretty impressive.
There's my Warren Sapp. I got a Buccaneers one too. I just got so much stuff just laying around. It's just laying there, dude. Just laying there. Sorry.
It's wild. Well, hey, thanks for listening. That was episode 1 of the Young Sheldon Rewatch Pod. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you come back next week. We'll figure out
we probably get more listeners that way.
Yeah, right. We'll figure out what shenanigans little Sheldon gets into next week.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. All right, man. Where can people follow you?
Oh, yeah, on Twitter, at JoshKeatley16. Feel free to DM me, bring up anything you want to talk about. Maybe bring us some topics for the show next week. We're trying to grow this thing and give us a like, listen, and follow, and all that good stuff.
Yep, definitely follow Josh. He's very active on the bird, and he's got some good takes out there. And he's going to tweet about guys that you've never heard of in your entire life. Definitely don't follow me. I'm not that interesting, but I'll be tweeting about young Sheldon and Ukraine, and I'll be just retweeting random funny stuff.
Oh yeah, I forgot. World War III started.
What are we gonna do? I know. I mean, it's very, very low on my priority of things to care about. Unfortunately, I don't fucking care. It is what it is. Nothing I'm going to be able to do about it.
Are we gonna get political on here? Are we gonna really dive into the politics, bro?
I don't think so. Do you want to get political? Are we going to go America all over everybody's asses?
We should. Aren't we? We're at one side. Listen, we have one solid listener, Adam Wilkins. We start talking politics, he's gone, dude. He's gone. That listener is gone forever.
No, I think he's on our side. I would assume, but I don't know.
Oh yes. Oh.
All right. Well, we'll see you next week. All right. Good.
Are you pressing or am I pressing? I don't know what the rules are.
I don't know. You press it.
Are you allowed? Can you? Can you?